Welcome back to Side B. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing a video showcasing a two-player combo for one of our favorite games, Wizard of Legend. This combo is all about bringing everyone from a room into a group and then dealing massive damage.
Before we start though, we should mention there's a couple of things we ran into that weren't relevant to the build. We're going to be skipping over those spells and items, so let's get into it, starting with Hunter's build.
So for my portion of the build, I wanted low cooldown so that I could throw out my signature all the time for the most damage possible. That's why I started with the Tempo Cloak for the base 12% cooldown reduction. My starting spells were Ice Dagger as my basic, Flare Rush for my dash, Scales of Babylon for my standard, and Shock Nova as my signature. I ended the run with Dragon Blast, Mock Stunner, and Ice Spear, but those are not integral to this build. Because I started the run with 4 different Arcana types, I grabbed the Captain's Ring as my starting relic for an extra 16% damage walking in, and then grabbed Stygian Turtle Shell, Braces of the Beast, and Volatile Gemstone. Usually you would want to grab more cooldown reduction, but the gods didn't smile upon us, and so I just went with defense. Next, Seth will go over his build for this combo.
Okay, so as far as my section of the build goes, what I wanted to do was focus on anything that gives critical hits or benefits from them. That's why I ended up starting out with the Vampiric Eyeglasses and took off for my cloak. Then throughout the run, I bought the Shiny Cloak, Tapping Gloves, and Dice of the Nemesis. I also bought a couple of defensive items that pair really well with the Vampiric Eyeglasses, since they add a substantial benefit to your eyeglasses activating while you're at max health. Those items were the Takeout Box and Tea of Mercy. As far as spells go, I just really wanted to increase my damage and number of hits, while keeping my enemies close to me. For those reasons, I started out with the Air Spinner for my basic attack, Circuit Line for my dash, Tearing Whirlwind for my standard attack, and Volt Pinball for my signature. I then ended up buying my enhanced basic attack and Caddis Prime.
Finally, to the real meat of the video, how our builds worked together.
I enter the room first, and I grab all of the enemies I can with my Tearing Whirlwind. Usually that's all of them. Then Hunter runs in and throws down a Shock Nova to hit as many enemies as he can. I throw out Volt Pinball, which pushes the enemies off of me, but it doesn't push them too far away, which means Hunter can drop his Scales of Babylon to decrease our active cooldowns on both of us by 3 seconds.
After this, we can follow up with whatever spell's necessary, because at this point, most enemies are close to death. If they're still grouped, I throw down my Shock Nova. If they're spread out again, Seth brings them back with Tearing Whirlwind, which sets up really nicely for more AoE damage.
A few things to be aware of when using this combo. Because of Hunter's lack of crowd control, he's messed up really badly when he enters first. Since the screen isn't centered on one person, it's kind of hard to judge what enemies are in an upcoming room. That's why I initiate, because I can effectively stun a large group of enemies.
With this much control you have over your enemies, ledges are your friend. They end the fight quickly without you taking too much damage from a prolonged fight. You still get any gold, relics, or spells dropped by enemies, so there are really no downsides to using this tactic.
Lastly, because of the massive AoE damage Hunter can throw out, small rooms magnify the effectiveness of this combo, and so do Scales of Babylon when you have more Arcana, so don't be afraid to buy some cool AoE spells.
Not only is this combo great for clearing out rooms in the dungeon, but also for high, single-target burst damage for those pesky mini-bosses and counselors.
When fighting the mini-bosses, this combo works best against the single-target ones, like the Strafe Archer, Fleet Lancer, and Counter Rogue. Their attacks are easy to avoid, and Tearing Whirlwind is a great gap closer if you find yourself too far away or when their invulnerability ends.
We had a lot more trouble against the more AoE-focused mini-bosses like the Burst Mage and Grand Summoner with this combo. Their projectiles regularly knocked us out of our Arcana, preventing us from casting our spells and forcing them into cooldown. If you feel like this is a weak point of yours, we recommend picking up Flak Gauntlets or Sano's Headband instead of Captain's Ring.
Ideally, I would pull the regular enemies away with Tearing Whirlwind, so that Hunter could blow up the boss with the spells. Since Volt Pinball ricochets between enemies, I'll still deal damage to the boss, and if Hunter positions himself right, he can hit me with Scales of Babylon to give me its benefits as well.
When it comes to fighting counselors, they all have a pattern. The first one casts 3 spells before losing invulnerability, the second casts 4 spells, and the third casts 5. Sura does cast 6 spells, with the last one being of the Chaos Arcana.
With that list, most of his attacks are really easy to avoid, with the exception of Towers of Terra and Tectonic Tendrils. The tendrils can be broken if you have Flak Gauntlet, because they are counted as projectiles. To deal with towers, we suggest staying far away from him, so that the warning spots are easier to see and react to.
Before fighting Zeal, Seth picked up Cardus Prime. With him being in the forefront of the fight in close range, this helps him tack on damage, especially when coupled with any crit items. Basically, if it spins in a circle, get it. The best advice we can give for Zeal is, don't get hit. She has multiple moves that have numerous hits, so getting hit by one means you are much more likely to get stuck in a combo.
We find Freya is one of the easiest counselors, even when facing her last. Her attacks are easily avoidable, especially if you keep your distance. However, this can affect you negatively too because of the screen splitting. She may end up off of your screen, which can hinder how well you gauge her attacks. Before entering this fight, I was lucky enough to pick up Dice of the Nemesis, which paid off immensely. This adds a 2% chance to deal 300 bonus damage to a critical hit. If you get lucky with crit items in the run, this increases your damage output to a ridiculous level.
The dice also pays off against Sura, since he stays stationary for his first phase. Coupled with my Scales of Babylon, we were able to handle his first phase quickly. A small tip, don't be greedy. Back out when you need to because his attacks hit hard. For his final phase, you have to spend most of your time running around avoiding him. Zephyr and Earth and Aegis are great spells to have for this purpose. If counting his spells and avoiding is too hard for you, look for the Chaos spell. That is always the last one in his combo, so you want to make sure your positioning is good to start your own combo afterwards. Be warned, he will dash away after casting the last spell, so don't use all of your spells until you're sure he's stunned. We used Tearing Whirlwind and Scales of Babylon to help us maneuver into position when we found we were too far away from him.
Hopefully your run with this combo went well, but if it didn't, we have an amazing single-person combo that could help.
Have you ever been playing Wizard of Legend and thought, man, I really wish I could get hit less? Ever want to look like this? Well, that's exactly what we're going to show you with this build. I went with the Shift Cloak for a starting evade chance of 10%. By the end of the run, that increased to a 111% evade chance. This build focuses on using Nev's Quartz. When carrying 7 Air Arcana, your movement speed increases by 28% and your evade chance increases by 21%. It also adds a nice slow to all your Arcana. To meet this, I started with Air Spinner as my basic, Gust Burst as my dash, Tearing Whirlwind as my standard, and Whirling Tornado as my signature. Throughout the run, I also grabbed Enhanced Tearing Whirlwind, Dragon Blast, Whirling Wind Agent, and Rushing Typhoon. My starting relic was obviously Nev's Quartz, and I picked up Nog's Heavenly Boots, Calvin's Sandy Shoes, and the Shiny Cloak. These are the most important items for this build. Together, they get you over 100% evade when at critical health. After buying your 7 Air Arcana and those other relics, you should prioritize damage or crits because of the crit chance buff given by the Shift Cloak. I ended the run with Gloves of Midas, Dagger of Midas, Bladed Buckler, Flak Gauntlets, Dark Katana, Puffy Parka, Devi's Bug Spray, and Rudra's Pinwheel. Your basic combo starts by grabbing everyone with Tearing Whirlwind. Use the full Air Spinner combo twice, then throw out Whirling Tornado. Before walking into the dungeon, I noticed I could get off 2 full basic combos and still hit everything with my signature. This maximizes damage output, especially early on. If they're not dead after that combo, just finish them off with some basic attacks. Even without any signature boosting items, I found myself getting a fully charged signature a lot. This is because of the multi-hit attacks that most Wind Arcana feature. I had the chance to grab a volatile crystal, but decided against it in case I found Anchor or Burden later. Most of the time, taking volatile crystal is definitely worth it, and will help you throw out charged signatures like you're shooting them from a gun. Now, some people believe using any of the Nev gemstones isn't worth it, but each time I've used one, I've found all the Arcana needed by 2-1 or 2-2. They really come into play during the 3rd level when all the enemies are scaled up, so it's fine. Just make sure to play a little safe until you activate its power. For the mini-bosses, none of them gave me much trouble, especially after activating Nev's Quartz. I grabbed Flak Gauntlets in the first area, which made dealing with the Burst Mage and Grand Summoner much easier. Fleet Lancer, Counter Rogue, and Strafe Archer are much easier since the regular enemies tend to be melee-based and have to get in close to hurt me. This plays really nicely with my large AoE spells to help burst down the bosses quickly. For most games I play, I find it more advantageous to take out the minions first before diving in on the big guy. This allows me to put all my energy toward avoiding his attacks and keeps the fight from becoming too much like a bullet hell. I ended up against Terra first, which wasn't difficult. I didn't have any of my evade items yet, so I just had to make sure I didn't get hit and count his spells. Don't worry about taking a couple hits, as long as you entered the fight with high health, you should be good. Next up, I fought Freya. Walking in, I had Nevs activated as well as my Nog boots. This put me at a solid 76% evade. Not as broken as my invulnerability, but still a solid amount of evade. I was getting more risky with tanking her attacks, but I didn't get punished too badly for it. I should warn you though, Nog's boots by itself only gives a 45% evade. The reason it's cursed is because when you get hit, it deals double damage. If your evade is still low, play really safe because a few missteps can end your run early. Walking into my fight with Zeal, I had hit that lovely 111% evade. As long as my health was critical, I got a 25% evade boost from Calvin's Sandy Shoes. While it's true that you can't get hit with this activated, you can still die from falling off ledges and you can still be frozen, so just be careful when you're running through the dungeons. The same thing goes for Sura. I knew the run was in the bag because I couldn't get hit. I even avoided grabbing the health drops at the beginning of the fight because I wanted to keep Calvin's Shoes active. Some things you could add to your build are items like Covert Ops Mask or any other cursed relics that lower your maximum health. Covert Ops Mask gives you 3 seconds of guaranteed crits after avoiding attacks, which won't be an issue. Most of the cursed items that lower your health offer some sort of boosted damage, but be aware it will lower the activation range of Calvin's Shoes. Hopefully, one of these combos got you through your fight with Sura. Some of our upcoming combo videos will feature some Chaos Arcana, so sorry in advance if you don't have them yet. If you have any questions on how the builds work, or any input to give to us, you can comment below. If you like the video and want to see more, like it and yell at us to make some more. Don't forget to subscribe, and good luck on your trial!